Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces here. For those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Sarah Warburton. I'm an HR business partner for the One Group. I joined the One Group nearly 2 years ago, but I do come with 24 years of recruiting HR professionals within the Hertfordshire area. Now, this is our first event, so yes, we are super excited. We're also really pleased to be partnering with the Herts Chamber of Commerce. The One Group, I suppose I could describe it as a recruitment agency that does recruitment the right way. I had the pleasure last year of opening our Potters Bar office, but we are a company that is really interested in building those committed relationships that maybe are outside of recruitment. So we love what we can get involved in, hence the fact that we've done this event this morning. Now, what I'd like to do is pass you over to my colleague Alessia. Alessia can properly introduce herself, but also just give you a clearer idea of why, when we were sitting down, we wanted to discuss AI and how it can improve HR outcomes. So, ladies and gentlemen, Alessia.
Hi, yeah. Yes, Alessia, as you've already heard. Those who don't know me, I've been, for the last 6 years, specialising in HR recruitment and specifically for public and not-for-profit sectors. As you can imagine, me and Sarah, we speak to numerous HR professionals on a daily basis, and it's not just about recruitment. We discuss their success, we discuss their challenges, as well as the latest trends within the people services. So AI being one of them, and it's interesting to see how it's transforming the landscape of HR recently. So we thought that it was very important to put an event like that, just to bring a lot of HR professionals in one room and have a better understanding of what it has to offer, what can be used, and what challenges can be faced. So we've partnered with Chamber of Commerce and our lovely Liz and Michelle, who are going to share their insight as to how using AI can transform or help improve HR processes. So not to take any more time, I'm just going to pass it over to Liz and Michelle, and I hope you enjoy this event and find a lot of interesting and useful information for yourselves today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Parry-Slater, and I am, luckily enough to have been voted HR Most Influential Thinker last year. I don't really know what that means. I think it just means that I write for People Management magazine, I write for Training Journal, I run a learning and development and organisation development company, and I've got a big voice on podcasts, so people know my name and therefore they voted, which is nice. But what does that mean for you today? Well, I have been around this whole view of AI for a while. I'm not an expert. Liz and I will both start our conversation with that. We're not an expert, but who is an expert in AI at the moment? This is a conversation that we are all having, and that's why today we are all having that conversation. It won't be us talking at you, who wants that in their lives? It's us talking with you. So I hope that you've all got nicely lubricated voice boxes with the coffee and the tea and the juice, because we're all going to be having lots of conversations. But I'll step aside and let Liz introduce herself.
Thank you very much. So I can see lots of friendly faces in the room, and welcome to everybody. So yes, my name is Redway. For those of you that don't know me, I run Redway HR, which is an outsourced HR management development company. And the insight hopefully I can bring today is what was really interesting when we were putting together the slides for this. I was reaching out to some of our clients to say, have you got any really great case studies? How are you using AI in HR in your role? And what was astonishing is that there was a radio silence. And I decided that either people aren't using it, or they're embarrassed to tell us that they're using it. So hopefully through the discussion we can bring about today, we can either break down that embarrassment and say sometimes there's some really great uses for AI in our roles, or indeed we can share some really useful tools that you might want to experiment with leading here And I think that's probably all I need to say about myself. But welcome, and please, as Michelle has said, it's all about participation. We know that we're not the experts, we don't know everything. We're hoping that you have some valuable contributions, and it's a far richer learning environment if we can bring those things out from the session. Oh, hang on, final thing. You may have noticed that there is photography happening. We're also videoing the session. If you're not happy to be included in the video or in the photographs, could you please raise your hand so that our photographer is aware? That's very kind of you. I've also been told that there'll be a link that if you're interested in having some of those photos, you can let me know and I'll be able to share that with you. Thank you.
Okay, we need to have a sense of who's in the room now. Liz has already invited us to remind us that we're in a conversation. We don't have all of the answers, so please don't feel embarrassed at all. What we'd like you to do is think about where you are on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is, I've no idea. What is AI? As opposed to 10 is, I'm using it all the time. Give me the mic, Michelle, get out and sit down. Which is you're very welcome. No? So, if I could ask all of you to stand up. It's good for you, it gets oxygen to your brain, because I've said you're going to get thinking, so don't worry, we're not going to be, I did used to live in Japan, but we're not going to do some kinesthetic. If you have a lot of experience in AI and you feel pretty confident and therefore you're at the 10, please take a seat. No 10s. How about 9s? Right, we've got a 9 at the front. Everyone ambushing on the way out? Got good ideas, so I'm looking forward to your ideas, please share. Any 8s? 7s? 6s? Oh, we got 7? Okay, another person to ambush. We're just really keen to know who's in the room, you see. Got another 7 over the way there, okay. We're getting down to the 6s.
We've got
6 and a half. They're just doing their exercises, Liz, that's alright. Okay, we're down into the 5s. Okay, so we've got a few on the different tables. Really do feel like you can share your experiences. If they're good or bad, you've tried, you didn't work, this is really important. Where are we then? 4s? 3s? 2s and 1s, I'll let you sit down together. So there's quite a lot of people in the room who are here for some answers, okay? If you have stories, do share. We're going to have lots of opportunity on the tables. Fortunately, you're quite evenly mixed, because I know at these sorts of events, everyone hates it when we say, could you pick up and come and sit somewhere else? Just feels uncomfortable when you've already made your tables introductions. So we don't need to do that, Liz, because they're quite evenly distributed. The questions then really are around, how can we use it? We're going to try really hard today and focus on the how. But let's be honest, we're writing this story. We're still writing it. We don't have all of the answers. And so it's absolutely fine to be at a 1 because you're here. You're starting your own journey and your own conversation, and that's really what's the important part. Dive in, the water's lovely.
Right, so clearly we have got a number of people who have already read the question and have started to input their responses. So the question being, how are you currently using AI? Okay? And then we've got some really interesting responses, starting with nothing. Fair enough, very honest. No idea. But lots of uses here, which are all moving around as I speak. Template letters, rewording text, subtitling, that's a really good one, isn't it? LinkedIn, presentations, policy generation. We're already starting to get a feel for the rich uses that might exist or might be there for us that can help us in our HR roles. Not at all. We aren't using AI. There are a number of people clearly who are at the very beginning of their journey.
I think it's worth saying that I was at an event on Tuesday with Linda Grattan, who you may know from writing a column in the Times. She's written books like The 100-Year Life. Somebody who's around this advises governments all over the world. And when asked how much is she using AI, how far along the journey, she said, I'm just watching. Which I thought was a really important actual approach. That she said she's looking for the business cases and she's watching the business cases because that's where we'll see the generation of movement. She said, like anything new, and she's been around the block a little while, she said, like anything new, if we watch and we learn and then we use it more discerningly. So So I'm not surprised to see this at all, to be honest.
No, I think that's right. I think people are dipping their toes into the water. But let's take a step back. We haven't yet thrown out there that AI isn't actually brand new. It's new to a lot of us because suddenly it's become accessible through things like ChatGPT, which I'm sure you've all heard of. But actually, AI has been there, under possibly a different name, for many years. Your Netflix account will be suggesting new TV shows, new films for you to watch because there are algorithms in the background making the calculations and deciding what it thinks you would like to see. Your social media, of course, will drop in different groups you might want to visit, pages you might want to visit. Even our weather forecasting, I think, has been using AI for quite some time. So while it's new to us in the room, it's not a new concept. It's just been made accessible to us through, in the last few years, things like ChatGPT and Gemini. Right, I'm going to bring us back to the slides by going that way. Yeah. There we go. So I think we are over to you. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a sense of what is it we're talking about. We need to be clear on the definitions, we need to be clear on the terms that we're using. What do we do and what don't we know? So we've just heard ChatGPT. Alright, ChatGPT is a suite of family called generative AI. It enables us to generate information. And we're seeing this used a lot more commonly now. And there's all of the different platforms are getting involved. We had initially Google Bard, they've just rebranded, renamed to Gemini. And this is the type of thing that we can all use. The difference is it's now democratized. AI, as Liz says, has been used in the background for many, many years. Amazon is another example where it's throwing stuff up to you. So how are we going to use this in HR, or think about this in HR, is really where our interest lies today. What don't we know? Well, we don't know when people are applying for jobs. Are they using Gemini to write that job application? We don't know, for example, when we're typing into systems, how much of that is being read by a machine and how much is being read by a human. And these are the sorts of things you need to grapple with, you need to get your head around, because it's only when we define what's allowed and what's not allowed, what's right and what's wrong, the ethical considerations of HR, that we can have those conversations in our organisations. It's not for us to say what's right or wrong, it's for you in your context. And I think that's a really important part of what we're talking about today. We can't tell you the answers because we don't know your context. It's a very important element that we define correctly. What does that mean for you? Now, there's two routes to this, of course. You can ban it, but they're going to do it anyway. So I think putting your head in the sand is not necessarily a good idea. Last autumn I was invited to a conference, and it was for Learning and Development conference. It was more for trainers actually, face-to-face trainers. And they had really great speakers, and we're going to give you some of the names of those great speakers at the end of this so you can go and investigate what they've got to say about it. But a great person, Parry-Slater. Egla is one of the people that talks about AI and really helps you to understand. And she was talking, and I could see the room did two things. Half the room went and leant forward and started listening really intently, and half the room just shook their head. The whole body language was, this is never going to affect me. I'm a face-to-face trainer. How's this going to affect me? It already is affecting you, and that's the point. So what is your context? And what are the defined terms in your context? What is the conversation that your CEO, or your CFO, or your CIO, or just the people sitting in your canteen are actually having? Do you know the answers to those questions? Because that would be a great place to start having that conversation. And if you raise AI, do you get the eye roll, or do you get them leaning in? Do you know the answers? It's up to you to decide. So, anything to add on the terminology?
Lots of scary terms out there. Or has anybody got any terms that they have heard that they might like to discuss or find out the definition of? Yes?
Ghost children.
Ghost children. Keep talking, sir.
Oh, right.
I'm leaning in.
Haven't heard. These are children that haven't returned since the pandemic because they prefer to learn on the internet and homeschooling.
Yeah.
education is assessment. So we assess at the moment based upon knowledge retention. My daughter literally at this moment is in a GCSE exam just across town on the English language. And that's how we assess. It doesn't assess social skill. It doesn't assess whether those people exactly emotional intelligence, critical thinking, the skills that we need in work. So let's face it, the education system, I would argue, is broken anyway.
Yeah, it's teaching people history instead of preparing them for the future.
Now, I'm married to a history teacher, so I've got curiosity. The skills that are taught in history are things like discernment. And that is a skill all of us now need in work. Because we need to discern when that application comes into you, for example, for a job, has that been written by Google Gemini, or has that been written by a human being? How will you know? So the skills that we need to really focus in on in work are shifting. And this is where the context piece comes into play. So I often liken this to, I'm sure maybe in the years I would much remember, when the motor car was invented. I certainly knew a bit before my time. But when the motor car was invented and you were working in the horse trade, shall I move to the next one?
I do, yeah.
When you were working in the horse trade, which end of the horse were you actually looking at? The difficulty we have, of course, if you are a farrier and everyone's on horses, or not everyone, because let's remember, same with AI, it's not everyone who's got access to this at the moment. We've got to be careful about that. You may have been on foot, of course. You may not have had a horse, but if you were working in the horse trade and you were a farrier, you could have done two things. You could have leant in and said, this thing called the car is coming. It's already here. I'm going to switch my business and I'm going to start making gates because cars are expensive. And I can use my blacksmith skills instead of making shoes for horses to make gates to put cars behind. We're exactly at the same position. I'm sure all of you are old enough to remember when you used to go into the bank to get your money out, and then they invented this thing called the ATM, the automatic telling machine. How many of you go into the bank to get cash out? How many of you use cash? Exactly that. Times change, and it's about moving alongside of those changes. So we're going to move into a bit of a period of time thinking about, well, what are the opportunities here? Because there are huge amounts of opportunities. This is not a doom and gloom session. This is a realistic session. Now, to your point about these ghost children, I've never heard the phrase, but I know exactly what you're talking about. The social skills, we need to create an environment where those skills are uplifted. So when people are coming into the workplace, if we're in learning and development, that will be part of our job. We'll have to help people to understand how to relate to other human beings. Because you're absolutely right. A lot of children who are in juniors at primary school now, when they play, they still socially distance. Because very early on in their years, that's what they did. They saw everyone around them standing away from other people. And we're having that generation that's going to come through. And we need in HR, we're the people, aren't we? We need to be cognizant of what's coming down the pipe. But there are lots of opportunities. So we need to be at the right end of the course.
Indeed we do. Actually, I'm going to stick with education. Can I come to you in just a moment? I'm going to stick with education just for a minute, and assessment in particular. And I know we've got a couple of my colleagues from the University of Hertfordshire visiting lecturers, and we've just, I hope, finished all of our assessments against the essays that have been submitted for a particular module that we've been teaching on. And this was my first time actually doing this as an exercise, and I had this great fear that I wouldn't be able to spot if someone had used AI to produce an essay, the two essays they need to produce in this particular case. But I can tell you now that it's glaringly obvious if someone has used AI and not then gone over it with a critical eye and used their analytical thinking. It's so glaringly obvious, and I was quite relieved by that. But the lesson I took from that is, in anything that we do in our roles within HR, we can use AI, but we still need to apply that critical thinking and our analytical skills to make sure that we are absolutely getting the output that we are looking for from the system. That's all I was going to say. Yes, did you have a question?
No, it's fine.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so if it comes back to you,
Sure.
shout out, I'll come to you straight away. So I thought it might be useful for us, being HR and L&D practitioners, if we looked at the employee life cycle and were to share any ways, any tools, any examples that you might be aware of in each of these areas where AI may be used to help make our lives easier, to help make the impact we have greater, and therefore be useful. And it's pertinent, I suppose, to start with the recruitment and selection piece. I'm throwing it out to you. What examples do you know about where AI could be used in that area? Yes, go ahead.
We've already solved this one at this table. We were having a recruitment chat before we started, and we were talking about various services are now offering and using a lot of AI to, in the generation of click apply,
Yes.
where every admin role I advertise has several thousand
Yeah.
applicants.
I feel your pain.
I've got to use something other than human effort to shortlist, to long list,
Yes.
and then use the critical thinking you were describing to shortlist.
Yeah.
And use real people, but there's got to be something, because everybody wants my admin job, and they've not even read the job description.
No.
They've applied for every admin job on Indeed.
Yeah. Exactly. And they live in the Maldives and they're
Other recruitment
skilled
software is
on
available.
carpentry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm very interested in human behaviour,
Mhm.
and I think that the way ahead is to invest in people,
Mhm.
not machines. Machines are there to balance people and make them more efficient. But in most businesses, I've discovered, it's top-down leadership instead of bottom-up.
Interesting.
And if you understand that, you will see that the next 5 years is going to see a pruning of middle managers, because AI will do their job better than what they can do. And then that will release funds that they could pay people what they're worth. Because the reason people are leaving workplaces, not because of the money, because they're devalued. They're not appreciated. And I can talk for myself, personal experience is I was a hotel general manager for 4 to 6 years. I studied human behaviour. And when I retired, I didn't even get a watch. Not that I wanted one, but it would have been a little bit of recognition that I'd have appreciated, but I never got one.
And I think you're right. I think the human element will always need to exist. The nuance, making somebody feel valued and special, is something that AI certainly at the moment can't do.
Impossible.
No. And you'd actually touched there on reward being. We've got reward on there. Yes, we do. Reward being affected potentially by AI in the future. Lots of hands now. Yes, go ahead.
Just to your point about using AI to filter out applicants, I think what we need to be careful about is that there are biases built into that software.
Oh yeah, fabulous. I'm sure we'll come back.
When it
comes to the challenges,
Absolutely.
That would
And
be
they're actually amplified more than if a human bias was there because of the people programming those systems. But there are now systems that actually apply AI to do diverse recruitment.
Interesting. Lovely. Yeah, thank you. This is why we need to go into this really with our eyes open and your context ready, because you're absolutely right. When we use generic large language models, that's when we see the bias coming out, because you're right, we're being programmed by people with one lens. So we need to be more questioning of our suppliers. So anyone that we're using, these kind of approaches with. You mentioned, one particular platform. A lot of the recruitment platforms are guilty of providing us with things that, as consumers, we think are great, one-click apply. But actually, there's unintended consequences, which is your role of sifting through thousands and thousands of applications. So we also need to be discerning around both ends of the spectrum. It's not just focusing the lens of consumer, but actually, us as employers, and then vice versa as well. So how much do you question your suppliers and really push them to provide you with platforms that actually do what you want? I saw an example of this the other day where they said, we've got this really fantastic new AI system. Great, what does it do? Well, you can input your goal by just telling it, I want a promotion, or I want to learn a new thing, and it will come up with a goal statement for you. And I looked at this and I was horrified. To your point, the human being, if you as a human being cannot write your own goal statement, kind of what's the world coming to? How are you going to own that statement and make that happen? So there are times we need to use AI and times when actually
that isn't necessarily the right option. And so, yeah, what are we changing to make it work properly?
Sorry, I did see a hand up over here a moment ago.
I'll come back to you in a second,
Yeah,
sir.
On there.
it's just picking up on performance.
Yes.
I've actually recently seen it twisted the other way. So HR is not being able to use it. Recently had 2 grievances come in.
Yeah.
I know the people that have sent grievances in. No way did they write those grievances.
Yeah.
They're using chat, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and it's such a detailed grievance
Yeah.
that just waffles on and on and on. You think, can you just get to the point? What is your grievance? But no way have they produced that.
No.
They've gone on the internet and they've had that written for them automatically.
I think that's entirely possibly right. It doesn't mean, of course, that you don't hear the grievance.
No, no, no.
But it makes it much harder for you to pick out the elements that are
Yeah.
pertinent.
Yeah.
And one would hope that the person's checked it for accuracy. And
That's it.
well, and that's the worry, isn't it? Because I've seen so many letters and things generated, and you think, where's that come from? That's not even relevant to this
I think
organisation.
the issue is if you look at the end, possible end, you end up in the employment tribunal.
Yeah.
You know, the judges in that tribunal will read that long grievance. So, what have you done about it? There's a very detailed grievance there, and you've not dealt with it. Well, actually, it's not a real grievance.
Does some of that go back to what you were suggesting though? It's about freeing up time. So if we're using AI to perform the routine tasks in the same way that the ATM chucks out the money, and what happened to those bank tellers? They didn't lose their jobs, they were redeployed.
Yeah.
They were
They did something
reskilled
different.
and they went and did something else. So we didn't see, huge layoffs of bank staff. And I don't think we'll see that again. It's just about moving to a different skill set. It's like a farrier, we no longer make shoes, but now we make gates. So you're desperate, and I'm keen to hear your
I just,
concept.
before we move on, I just want to go back to this point about goals and this machine that can write goals. And I'm a business coach, and I work with people writing their goals every single day. I would say 75 to 80% of people cannot write a goal. They cannot translate what's in their brain and what they can think very clearly into words. And that's a massive problem, because if you can't get over that, then you can't actually do what are the tasks, how do we hold them accountable, all that kind of stuff, because they haven't properly expressed in paper. So while, yes, it would be better if people could write them, the reality is most people can't, and therefore anything that can help them express what they need better, I think is a
So
good
what
thing.
you've provided there is context.
Yeah.
What a perfect example of context. So from my perspective, I'm like, own your own stuff, people. And then you're saying, actually, that's hard. So if you can give them a tool, because what you're talking about over here is it's a tool. This is all it is. You can give them a tool which helps them, and then they own it, then great. So we need to really understand what is the context that we're playing within here.
I think that applies really nicely to managers setting smart objectives for their team, and I don't know how many of us in this room have had to talk managers through how to do that, and it is a difficult thing. So at the very least, if we've got a tool to help us with our starting point, and then we apply our critical thinking and analytical skills to make sure actually it's correct for the context, correct for the individual, I think it can save some time. There was another hand up somewhere. Yes, go ahead.
Just with the recruitment side of things, I've not got experience of this myself, but I'm aware that there are tools out there now that will go through all your social media and create a psychological evaluation, which people are using within the recruitment industry.
That slightly terrifies
It
me.
is really, it's a real kind of, you don't realise it, and it's allowed because you have put it out onto
It's
public
social,
channels.
right? But we're gonna end up being good cops, bad cops. Possibly.
I'm terrified. I'm going fantastic. What an opportunity. Why do we put stuff on social media anyway? We put it out there to be found. If you don't want to be found, don't put it out there. It makes people perhaps think more clearly about, well, what am I putting out?
Well, that's certainly true. I would say if I was trying to recruit someone on the basis of what's been gleaned from their social media, my worry would be that that's only one subset, and photos of myself on the beach, for example, isn't necessarily relevant to a job application. But it's the context. It's exactly
all
that.
about
It's
the context. If you're recruiting somebody who is working in a social job, that might be the right thing to do.
It's true.
If you're working for somebody, where psychological profiling is important, then that might be the right thing to do. This is the conversation you need to be having. Go on, Seth.
Sorry, I was just, can I very quickly respond to the bias point there? I think it's probably even larger than the point you made, because to give an example, I believe that Google are actually quite meritocratic. They're quite a good employer, so they shouldn't have a lot of bias at the top when they're designing their AI. But an AI, by definition, is a learning tool, so it's going out to the internet, which we know is very biased, to learn how to be. So it's not just bad programmers designing biased tools, it's these tools going, the minute they're let out of the gate, they're learning from everything around them. They're picking up in every Fox News article about everything, and then they're making decisions based on that, and then they're generating more content, which is then guiding other AIs to learn. So it's a spiral. It's a pretty terrifying
There's
concept.
always going to be bad actors, which is why the good actors need to get involved in the conversation. So we can't, Linda's point, certainly with the day, was, and it was challenged to her, are you sitting back and waiting for this to happen? Whereas you've got a voice in the public space, you should be, being more vocal about it. And she said, I am, but very much behind the scenes, because I'm having the context conversations. And that's really the invitation to all of you. We can't sit back and pretend this isn't happening. This has been happening for a long time.
We've been working with students on a particular module and actually looking at AI and embracing AI. So how might we use it within HR and best practice? So we got them to actually use ChatGPT to look at policy construction. Okay, so gave us a policy. So let's look at the challenges, the issues, but also the benefits of that. So we're getting students to actually think critically, analysing it, and thinking about the context. So thinking about the business environment, the stakeholders, etc., and how that then, works. So we're sort of suggesting to students about embracing AI, but really understanding there are challenges and issues around that.
I think that's a really important approach, because otherwise you're burying your head like an
It's
ostrich,
reality,
aren't you?
isn't it?
Yeah,
This is what we're living with.
Yeah.
So
History is littered with stories of organisations that didn't move. I mean, everyone knows Kodak, if you've driven through Hemel today, beautiful residences that used to be a head office of an organisation that was the leading photography organisation. And in fact, their R&D department invented digital and said this will never take off. And so they just left it in a cupboard. So we can't ignore this stuff. So it's great to hear that you're doing that, because it's the future of the kids, aren't they? They need to.
There are future HR practitioners,
Exactly,
hopefully. So,
And there was another question somewhere.
Yeah,
Was
there's
it
another
the
hand.
lady over there? Yeah.
So I have quite a few points that I wanted to raise about bias, but I'll leave that for a moment. Just on the point here at the front from sort of University of Hertfordshire and what you're doing to support the next generation coming into the workplace. But what obligation do employers at this moment in time have for their existing employees to teach, and I'm being provocative in the language there, right? To teach about context and about that critical thinking, because the amount of people that that I work with and engage with, leadership and otherwise, are so snowed under with the day-to-day task of the job. How can they raise their heads, take a moment to breathe and pause and say, right, I now need to be thinking about critical evaluation skills and context in the whole round of onboarding new teams or interviewing or supporting my talent acquisition colleagues in making sure we've got the right peoples. How does that work? Who's got the obligation there?
I think, so one of the reasons we're doing this today is that I think as HR and L&D practitioners, I think we should be driving what does our workforce need to look like and learn in order to survive in the world, not just survive but thrive in the world of AI. So I think there's an onus on us, and we'll come at the end actually to answer that question in more detail. But I believe we have to drive some of this. We can't wait for our IT teams who might know about coding and algorithms. We are responsible for our organisational learning and surviving and performing. So I believe there's an onus on us to be able to drive that.
I agree. There's a skills shortage at the moment anyway. The skills agenda is huge, and these are the reasons why, because the skills that got us here will not get us there. We have never in the world ever moved as fast as we have today. And today is the slowest we are ever moving in the world, because tomorrow we're going to move faster, and that is only going to continue. So how do we therefore prepare and continue to prepare? If we don't, we will disappear. There was a survey recently done, I'm going to say Boston Consulting Group, but don't quote me on that one. I will look it up at the end if anyone wants to know. And they asked CEOs, in 5 years' time, will your organisation still exist? 70% said no, it will not exist in its current form. 70%. So this is, I think, our opportunity in the people profession to really step up, even more than we stepped up during the pandemic, when we really did step up, let's face it. But at this moment in time is the time where we need to step up and help be the strategic partner, strategic people partner that our CEOs, that our C-suite need in order to help prepare for that skills gap of the future. So how are we going to identify that gap? How are we going to fill that gap, leaning into the L&D world in a way that we haven't really embraced. Courses are not going to do this. This is not about your learning department putting on a course in 6 months' time how to be discerning in your in your conversational approach, or how to replace middle managers with AI, which I do think will happen and is already happening. We need to really push hard, I would suggest.
That's absolutely right, and that includes our own skill set in order to be able to do that. I'm just going to pass the lady behind you first, if that's all right.
Ladies first.
Actually, I'm going to build on what you just said about our own skill set, because my experience in using AI is it's how smart you are in using it that determines the output. So, for example, I use ChatGPT. Hogan, if anybody doesn't know what Hogan is, it's a psychometric tool. It's a very complex, data-rich tool, which when I used to do it and do the analysis, it would take like 4 hours to do it thoroughly. You now put, and Hogan tells you to do this, you put the numbers into ChatGPT and it gives you the analysis. But what I've learned from using it is if I just put the numbers in, I'll get some vanilla output. But if I ask the right questions and give some context about the person I'm trying to analyse and their challenges, then I get a really rich output from it.
So it's like any tool, it's the way we use it.
So what you're talking there is a prompts, and this will be a job of the future. To be an AI prompt writer will be a job of the future, because you're absolutely right in that. What we've also then got to frame that in is the ethical question, and making sure that that data is going in anonymously, and that kind of thing, because we are teaching the AI as much as we use it. So raising that, I'm just raising that as a flag really. We were going to move on to start thinking about challenges, and I think that is definitely important. But
I will just say,
hold it.
Yeah, just in terms of prompts though, I don't know, I assume we've got a number of CIPD members in the room. Last week they sent out in their newsletter a list of here are some really great prompts for AI. So there is obviously recognition that that's a really useful tool, but absolutely the ethics and confidentiality, and we'll come on to the challenges. You're right, we'll pin it for a minute. Any other examples that we're aware of?
Opportunities.
Yes, in terms of opportunities for using AI. Yes, go ahead.
Are aware we've not done much at the bottom of the board there. Pay and reward is an interesting one. I've got 2 good examples for this one. I'm not going to say Indeed again. I need to think of a different one. Total Jobs.
Yeah.
Various online platforms are now advising you, because they're using AI to do massive sweeps of the market, to say you're advertising for a operations manager. You will get better applicants if you advertise at. So it's actively guiding you to where the market is putting these particular roles, but it's making large general assumptions based on job type. So there's a plus there. It's going out and going, if you're going to advertise for an operations manager at £22,000, you're not going to get one. But at the same time, it's also assuming that what I think of as an operations manager is what everybody else thinks of an operations manager.
I would suggest there's a bit of a cultural difference in this. So different countries have a different approach to pay and rewards, and they're very transparent about it. The UK is not, and traditionally we've not been, which is not helpful. This is why you get thousands of people applying for the job. Because if you were to say an operations manager at 22,000, people would self-select out of that. And other countries, especially other countries where there are less vibrant markets, there's just not enough skills in the marketplace, they advertise with the price because then they want people opting in rather than opting out. So we may have a cultural shift in how we approach pay and reward as a result of AI pushing us to have these conversations about price. We don't know yet. Let's see how it goes.
So
That
just
on
on
balance,
that,
terribly being quiet about pricing, one of the reasons why the gender pay gap is what it is. So I believe we should be transparent.
And that's why it's a UK problem.
Yeah.
Other countries
So,
are less.
so just on that, European gender pay gap legislation will come into force in, will be, well, it's in force, but nationally, legislation frameworks have to have this in place by 2027. One aspect of that European gender pay gap requirement is to provide those salary bands. Now, if we're doing that across all European member states, I would imagine then that our UK pay gap legislation won't feel as groundbreaking as it was from 2017 onwards, and then we might start to then see that trickle through effect here in the UK. But certainly for companies that operate across EMEA or globally, I think that European legislation will have an impact there on salary and scale.
It's definitely an opportunity. AI is going to force a more transparent workforce. It's not just us as employers that would become more discerning, but actually so are, and we're seeing it already with younger generations not standing for the nonsense that we all stood for, and that lack of transparency. So I think these are good opportunities for AI to support us.
I'm going to move us on because I fear we could spend all day talking here. But the challenges, right, are equally important. So we've heard words like bias, we've talked about ethics slightly. What are the other challenges that we might see in an AI world, particularly within our roles in HR and L&D? Yes, go ahead.
Whether people are who they say they are, I think it's very easy to present yourself differently using AI. So I'd imagine you'd have to be very careful about quality of people that you're dealing with.
It's still that discernment, isn't it?
Yeah.
The analysis.
Who's using the data? What are they using it for?
Yeah, for sure.
You don't know who's at the end of the computer, at the end of the system,
No.
who's accessing all of that data in between.
So there's a strong argument from people like Katrina Collier, who's written a book called Robot Proof Recruiter, that we need to put the human back into the system. We need to enable the application, for example, through the AI tools, but it's when you sit down with a real human. Now, for many of us, that's not an issue, but for some of us, actually, the interview process is the problem. So we need to get better at actually placing that into a more open structure. How many of you, for example, put your questions out to interviewees prior to them coming to an interview? How many of you offer the opportunity for thinking time in the room prior to somebody answering a question? So we need to think about our neurodiverse colleagues, we need to think about our context, we need to think about people who are new to work, never had an interview before, because you're right, they might be brilliant on paper because they're really good at navigating the technology, but actually when you're sitting down in front of them, we need to give them some more support. So I don't think the human is going away.
No.
It's the nuance of how we're using our time that will shift. So to go back to your point about using AI to sift, fantastic, that is a great use of a tool. But actually, sitting down with another fellow person, I mean, there's great AI out there that you can actually have a video interview. So for somebody who, going back to our ghost children, I'm going to use that phrase, our ghost children may appreciate the opportunity to talk to AI and have a video-based interview in that way, because that's how they've lived their lives. And so we need to think about...
I find people being surprised now that we would like to meet them for an interview.
Yeah.
Increasingly, genuinely surprised that they may need to come to the place they would be working.
So we need to question why. Why do we need to meet them? You know, why is that important? And if we're only ever going to remotely employ them, there is a question: do we need to meet them? I mean, we might want to have a Zoom call, for example, but
I'm not going to recruiting people, but I find it fascinating, and I'm neurodivergent and my kids are, and my kids are primary school age, so did the COVID thing. I have a son who would be far more comfortable sat in the house, not having to do the social context thing and learning. So I think we're very careful where I work about recruiting, about making it an inclusive process. But everybody we work with does come to the office at least an amount of time. And so I find it really interesting because I'm like, it's not just for us to meet you, but surely you want to see where you would work, the building that you'd work in, whether you feel like you can step out of your bedroom and into this environment, because you can't test whether you feel comfortable here. And I think it's that piece that, it's the connection of that, is like this younger generation who have been brought up on this have connected in that way, but equally they're so stuck to their own environment. And like, if you are going to step out from that, you've got to be absolutely sure that this is an environment you feel comfortable in. That's got to be really important, right? And
It's a beautiful invitation. I feel
really,
like, you know, you're looking at the right end of the horse, because you're offering that for them, not for you, for them.
yeah.
What about at the other end of the spectrum then? You must have heard in the news about, for example, Amazon firing someone because of their productivity, which was gauged by AI, and I think they were even probably dismissed by AI. And Uber, there was an Uber driver, wasn't there, who took the long way round, and AI decided to strike that person out as well. So there's definitely some risks, and of course the Uber driver got the wrong way round because the bridge was out in central London, or you know, some such thing. The human element, again, was definitely missing from those types of decisions. So particularly to automate the firing, ethically, strikes me as completely wrong. But yes, go on.
I think there's an interesting point where you mentioned about we were forced into a situation when the pandemic hit, where if you recruited people, then obviously you couldn't meet them face to face, so it forced you into a technology aspect. But I think certainly looking at it from an aspect of us as recruiters is that people very quickly miss that element. I mean, I appreciate AI will make changes, but I think we found again people want to meet people, they want to actually, you know, engage with them, because then you can make a proper judgment. It's a bit like the gentleman there mentioned about, you know, he didn't realise how short or tall people might be, but I think again we went through that because we had no choice. But again, we're going back to the point, and it'll be interesting to see how AI has an impact as we move forward. But at the end of the day, I think people like meeting people and making a decision based on, you know, you've met people on Zoom or Teams, is still quite difficult for people to decide upon. So I think there's going to be an interesting outcome as to how that moves forward when we have been through a similar thing.
Agreed. Cultural fit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot here, I feel.
Carry on. We've got to learn.
I'm just going to say the point you made about the Uber driver. I hope to goodness I'm never in this situation, but I anticipate a world where we were talking about losing that middle management thing, which would be the HR stuff. Considering all of these cases, I might find myself in a situation where I'm speaking to my senior leadership team saying, actually, we're Uber, we've got goodness knows how many drivers on the road. You could pay out on settlement from employment tribunals this amount of money from people who feel they've been abused by the AI, or you could pay annual salaries to this many HR managers to consider all of these cases. That's a cost saving.
Interesting.
Which is a terrifying challenge.
Yes,
I never want to be in that situation.
But that's a really interesting observation.
It is. Yeah. It is. But why wouldn't you do it? So what?
So I think if you employ HR, hopefully you'll stop it happening. If you go down the other route, we just constantly pay.
Yeah, but that might be less.
You want to talk about the reputational damage.
Yeah, they don't need a pay
And
reputational damage.
Yeah, it's breaking the cycle, isn't it?
It's interesting just listening to the conversation that a lot of we're sort of jumping from simple to quite complex. You think like firing somebody because they've taken, that's complex in reality. Well, I think what AI is all about to start off with is can we take out the human from the simple stuff and start at the simple firing somebody complex. Well, let's start at the bottom and work our way out. Let's not worry too much about that bit. Unless there's an unintended consequence up there because we're dealing with something down here. But if we start at the bottom, then we should create quite a lot of value.
There's two things you've just picked up on there. One is, this is the process opportunity. This is for us to get more simple with our processes and to free up time. This is the automated teller that took us away from speaking to people. Therefore, we can now speak to people instead of here's my 50 quid out the bank, could we sell you some insurance? So you're upskilling your tellers into salespeople. It's just a shift in the work. The other thing that you mentioned there around that complexity, and how we jump to complexity and we jump therefore often to fear. And it's the fear of losing our job, it's the fear of not being able to pay my mortgage, that kind of thing. Now we have to be better than that. We have to, as people professionals, be better than just running with fear. Because everyone else is going to be running with fear. Who's looking out for the people who are running with fear? Well, it's us. So we just need to keep a bit of a level-heading way. And I think you're right, start simple. Start in your context with the simple stuff. And if that is ChatGPT, then great, do that. But let's be discerning. Let's realise, the reality.
I think technology just scares people. And at every stage in everybody's life as you move forward, you embrace it and you move on. So this conversation will be a very different conversation in, say, 3 years' time or 5
Not
years'
even
time.
3. I would argue in 12 months.
Yeah.
Probably even 6 months. Don't forget, we've only had generative AI truly democratised since the 30th of November 2022. 2022, it's not even 2 years old yet.
Yeah.
It's moving so fast and it will never ever move this slowly again.
Some of us in this room that remember years before a mobile phone. When they kept that, will never catch on. Can't live without them.
We can't be that, it will never catch on. It is here, and it has been here pre-generative AI for many, many years.
It's just becoming more mainstream, isn't it?
It is.
And there was a question.
I was just going to say, I was sort of on the 3 to 4 scale when we did this and trying to stand up earlier. But I find in my experience of using AI so far that the human interaction and the AI element have to go hand in hand.
Yes,
So, for example, we use AI to analyse our engagement survey results, and a lot of the sentiment that comes out of that engagement survey. So I work for a business of over 16,000 employees, and sometimes the AI isn't actually giving us the correct sentiment, and because we work in a European business as well, sometimes their understanding of certain words that we use within the engagement survey versus how AI are picking that up can be very different. So I don't ever see a world whereby the two can go hand in hand.
Spot on. In fact, there's some research about HR chatbots. So there are lots of organisations using HR chatbots, and where those are simple queries, to your point about simplicity, starting small, how much annual leave have I got left, or what's the anniversary of my start date? There's high satisfaction from employees using a chatbot for something like that, but where it is more complex, or where it needs the nuance and the human touch, satisfaction drops way down there. I'm not going to speak about it.
We've been using these for a long time. This morning, for example, I got my mobile phone bill and it was wrong, and I went on the chatbot straight away, and it frustrated me because it asked me about 12 questions before it said, chuck me to a human, when actually I just want to chuck me to a human. So our role here is actually supporting people who create the technology with the people overlay. So actually, I know that O2 are clearly, the tech guys have created that, but if you'd have gone to a person and said the person will get annoyed about them. Think about design thinking. If you actually really lean into design across a broad spectrum and we're not looking at it through one lens, I wouldn't have waited for 12 conversations. I was getting to the point of, I haven't got time for this. So it got me annoyed. So we can help in that. We can be involved in those conversations.
I'm
Blind of
time.
I want people to have conversations on the table before we leave. So shall we just skip?
Well, I was going to skip, but I know in terms of challenges you wanted to talk about power consumption.
Yes. So one of the challenges that we have got, and I keep talking about context and streamline, how much energy does it take to create an image using generative AI like DALL-E, for example? What's your guess? How much energy does it take? Would it be to create an image, an AI-generated image? A lot.
What's its data set? Are you talking a closed data set or a giant?
Large language model. DALL-E's got
The whole of the internet.
yeah. We've got to be really, really discerning. It actually takes the same power as you charge your mobile phone from 0 to 100% to create one image. So we need to be thinking from a sustainability perspective about where we layer in our AI. Now, to go to the goals conversation again, is that a good use of energy to create that goal? Now, for the person that is utterly stuck, as we've heard from our coach, yes. But from the person who's being damn lazy, no. And so we need to be really thinking about actually when is AI appropriate and when AI isn't appropriate, because this is literally costing us the earth. So we need to make sure that we're using it and deploying it in the right way. There's an article that I've written for People Management magazine that's coming out on Friday. It's focused on green learning and development, but in there, we talk about the research. Amelia links there that if you're interested, you could go and have a look at, because it is really interesting now. That the argument is, this is an article published in the BBC. I'm just going to put it up, and the date was October last year. The AI industry could use as much energy as the Netherlands to hold the industry. Just shocking.
Bonkers.
It is shocking.
So I am going to move us forward. You will, I think, be forwarded these slides afterwards if you wanted to follow some useful people. But before we move on to the discussion, maybe the discussion is the sort of last question, perhaps. So you'll have them, but there you go. I did just want to show you a couple of tools for those who haven't even dipped their toe in the water. There's some easy access tools, many which have a sort of free level of subscription if you wanted to have an experiment and see how they work. I can still see a photo being taken. Marshall and Linda, there we go. So here are some examples of some AI. I don't know whether we've made the point clearly or not, but you can write your own AI, or you can buy an off-the-shelf AI and tailor it to your organisation, which sounds far simpler. There's lots of tools already out there that you can have a look at. These are some. Fathom I recently experimented with as a note-taking tool. So we talked about grievances earlier. Potentially you no longer have to have a note-taker in the room with you. A tool like Fathom can do that. Actually, I was quite impressed. I've used various note-taking transcription tools in the past. This one took a transcription which was accurate, summarised adequately, and even set out next steps, action points from this meeting. So that was with the free sample. So that's not a bad one to have a little look at. Of course, other tools exist that do similar things. And to our point about ChatGPT and Gemini in this example, I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I got it to draft a few slides for me for this particular presentation? So that's what I asked it to do. It came back as one of the slides with these 4 bullet points. But of course the point we've already made about analytical thinking and critical thinking, those were all the other points I needed to add to it because it hadn't quite got the whole picture. So that human element and that strategic thinking is really important as well. I'm whizzing. Canva.
One other thing I noticed on the site, which it always picks up on American spelling.
Oh, I know. Yes, absolutely. I suppose I could have prompted it to make sure it was UK
I was
spelling.
going to say, can you do that?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
do it.
no, but that often you can tell, like,
Totally.
about the
It goes back to the assessment, doesn't
it
it?
just jumps out, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
for sure. Canva is a tool we use to do our social media, make lovely, beautiful images and graphics and slides. So I gave it a try and tested what it could do using its AI to produce a slide. This is what it produced. On the downside, the colour format that it produced, actually, which you flagged very beautifully, it produced this in a different colour set, which meant that was really hard for people with visual impairments or colour blindness to actually be able to read. Yes, go ahead.
Just on Canva, because I saw a fantastic example of this a little while ago. HR Review, I think it was HR Review, used Canva to do all the images within their articles and blogs online. And I saw a fantastic article on onboarding,
Yes.
and there was a beautiful image of a boat. A large cruise liner, and it was gorgeous. Sorry, carry on.
Context.
Check your work.
Discernment and
Check your
work.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is check your work. Yeah, absolutely. With all the time it's freed up for you because it's written it for you, then you've got time to check your work.
Do a proper job. This is a tool that I tried out. I spent 20 minutes on this. This is a tool that will generate video for you. I sadly don't think the video is downloaded, which is a huge shame. I uploaded my photo. I uploaded a script. I clearly didn't centralise the text that was there. I picked an accent for myself, and although you can't see it today, although that was just a still photo of myself, that now is me talking and my lips moving in time to the words that I've input. Now I'm thinking several uses here in terms of videos, online candidate applications. You can translate that into various. Don't take a photo of that one. In terms of your employer branding, for 20 minutes, I know you can't see the video. I was actually quite pleased with course, you can do with all sorts of tools that have free access. If you tell them what the experiment, how can this help you in your role? So we'll make sure that you get.
Married this year, I think I'll use that.
It's a great idea.
What's interesting, here's a switch actually, and I've seen this quite a lot of stars. Miriam Margulies started doing this. For £100 you can get them to create a video, a real video, and that is in response to not creating, because they're losing their rights as actors. And it's just the kickback response to the challenge, isn't it, at the end of the day?
For sure, for sure. So, to your excellent question earlier on about future-proofing then, we obviously need to be doing something to move our organisations and people forward, so we're recruiting the right people. We are training the existing people we have up already so that they are able to exist and thrive in this role. So the question, I guess, to you, and maybe what we do is, in your tables, just spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes answering the question, so what do we need to be doing in our roles? I know that there was some really rich conversations going on there, so I am only going to interrupt you for a minute or two, and you are very welcome to stay and continue those conversations obviously once we've finished here. If you haven't already done that, please revisit Menti and answer the question, what are your next steps? Bearing in mind the discussion you've heard today, the discussions on your tables, let us know what you think you'll be doing next. I can see some of you have already done that. It is quite hard to read from this one, Michelle, I'm going to peer around. Seeking out new tools, absolutely. There are so many out there. Exploring, 3-year plan, that sounds very good, 3-year plan. Staying curious, I love that language, stay curious. There's always something to learn, something new. Start trying things out, embracing the change. I love it, I love it. We've put our contact details up here for those that would like them, and I think we're handing back over to you, are we?
You are absolutely.
Just to say, we will give you, we've just discussed it, we'll give you a very, rather than the slides which are just made for image basis, we'll give you the details, but one of the things we haven't mentioned, which you go away with, is a website called There's an AI for That.
Oh yes.
There's an AI for That is where you'll find non-large language models, you'll find smaller options that have already been created, so you don't necessarily need to create this yourself, but you'll get that to take. Really lovely.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, would love a round of applause for Liz and Michelle. I don't know about you, but I've definitely learned something today, which is probably not hard. But you know, it's been a great event. Please take your time, carry on having your conversations. We can get more coffees, teas, drinks outside, but really we'd both like to say thank you very, very much for coming.
And participating.
And it's been lovely to see so many faces from the past, but also new faces as well. So from Alessia and I, thank you for